President Xi, in his speech, has mentioned that blue waters and green mountains are actually gold and silver mountains. I understand why some of you might be a little confused because this is a literal translation, but basically what he's trying to emphasize is the importance of environmental sustainability. In the past decade, there have been multiple rounds of global talks and initiatives by governments in order to achieve said environmental sustainability. However, they have not resulted in much action. Targets have not been met. Ant Financial recognized this gap in the market that as governments, they're not doing much. However, collectively, as individuals, they hold great power. Ant Financial hence rushed to fill this gap in the market using Ant Forest. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are Team HKU, proudly representing Hong Kong. I am Neha, and these are my colleagues, Jovi, Jane, as well as Michael. And today, we're here to present to you how Ant Financial can chart a path towards financial sustainability of its CSR initiative, Ant Forest. Allow me to walk you through today's agenda. Firstly, we'd be diving into the situation analysis of what is Ant Forest, as well as what is the current way forward it can take, before moving on into our strategy, which is a explore as well as capitalize strategy. At the end of our presentation, we'd be wrapping up by providing you with an implementation as well as execution plan, as well as providing you some key impacts of our strategy. Now, I would like to pass on the time to my colleague to dive into the situation analysis.
Before we dive into the current situation of Ant Forest, let's first look into how it is currently situated. Ant Financial is currently under Alibaba, and it has different various financial products, including Alipay, Yuebao, and Sesame Credit. And these products create an entire ecosystem that coexists and live upon the network effect. However, we also face a fierce competition with Tencent, who capitalizes upon its huge user base on WeChat. And due to this competition, we have seen a 20% decrease in the market share in the last 3 years. So we have to stress the maintenance of user base is crucial in its future success and sustainability. And the user base is also threatened by a common perception by the public on how the financial industry is neglecting the corporate social responsibility. And it's prone to facing huge damages by single scandals. In order to solve these two problems, Ant Financial has initiated Ant Forest that bridges finance and environment social responsibility. So what is Ant Forest? Ant Forest tries to trace individual carbon footprints, where 1 gram of CO2 reduction leads to 1 Ant energy that can be used as a currency within its system. It is traced through its walking records as well as electronic invoices and use of environmentally sustainable transportations. However, these have not seen an immediate impact. So in order to increase the stickiness of our users, it has implemented a tree planting initiative where about 220,000 grams of CO2 reduction would allow the users to plant 1 tree at a desert in Mongolia. And also through gamification and different themes and social effects, it has been able to create a huge user base as well as increase its reputation. However, Ant Forest is currently experiencing a huge concern over the financial sustainability. In just 2 years, it had used $72 million and led to a net loss of about $300 million in just the first 9 months of last year. So here's the question: do we continue this costly project? To understand the situation, we'll have to look at the actual impacts it has generated. Well, the 5% of the entire world population has been able to understand the importance of environmental sustainability. And through our initiative, about 3 million tons of carbon dioxide has been reduced, whilst other companies has been only contributing to increase of carbon dioxide emission. Also in business aspect, we have seen about 75% increase just over in 1 year in our system. So we believe that Ant Financial has to continue with this social responsibility project. But of course, there's a huge obstacle in front of us, which is how can Ant Forest become a financially sustainable project? And this concern can be divided into whether we commercialize or do we reduce the cost of this project, which can be further clarified by my colleague Neha.
Thank you, Jane. So now moving on, I think first we need to delve into what kind of options does Ant Financial have in order to save Ant Forest. So as we mentioned before, there is the option to save costs, so we don't spend too much on the CSR initiative, or we can commercialize the project. So in these two categories, we have come up with two options that we could focus on. For save costs, we could either have partnerships with government, recognizing the immense carbon emissions that we are saving. We could potentially push some of the cost of planting the trees to the government. Or we could have a certain way to tie in Ant Forest to our ecosystem in order to save costs. And in terms of commercialization, we can either gamify and have in-app purchases in Ant Forest in order to create some new revenue generation streams, or we could create a new revenue stream another way. So after a thorough evaluation of the options, we've realized that a partnership with the government, as well as a gamification technique, would actually just undermine the whole CSR initiative. Hence, we propose that we find a way to tie into our ecosystem, as well as create a new revenue generation stream in order to increase the sustainability of our project, increase our user base, as well as increase our loyalty. So now you might ask, how are we going to do this? So this is our recommended course of action for Ant Financial, is our explore as well as capitalize strategy. On the explore side, we're going to be creating a new product called Juicy, which would provide us with a new revenue stream. And on the other hand, we would be using and leveraging our current Alipay ecosystem in order to save costs in the short run. Now, so we realize that the huge, immense environmental benefits that Ant Forest actually does provide, and hence we realize that we're not going to ditch this CSR initiative completely. However, we're going to find and navigate the pathway for a more sustainable CSR project.
Now, let's talk more about our details of our new project, Juicy. And Juicy is actually the utilization of end products, and we are integrating the end products of our current trees into our current ecosystem to help Ant Financials to generate more revenue. And before we talk about what Juicy is, we are trying to look at the current situation. And for current gamers of our existing game Ant Forest, users are given the flexibility to choose which species of trees that they are going to plant. And so now, users can choose between different species, and one very special thing about Ant species sea buckthorn is that it is actually other than just being a tree that is drought tolerant, it is also produce fruits that will be rich in vitamin C and can be processed into juices that are very popular among youngsters nowadays. However, for Ant Forest, they are now just dumping these usable fruits into the beans. And that's why we think that we can leverage on these existing end products to integrate them into our current ecosystem to generate more revenue. So how does the whole project New Juicy work? First, actually, we are trying to gather the fruits from the species sea buckthorn, and after that, we will leverage on our current logistics system to transport them to the groceries that is under Alibaba currently. And after that, we are going to have the on-site juicing and have the bottling to sell to our consumers. And afterwards, we are going to have delivery to other retailers. And later on, my colleague will further talk about the feasibility of our new project. So who are the targets of our bottled juices? We have identified three major stakeholders, with the first being the younger generations. As we have mentioned before, for the fruits that are produced by the trees, they can be processed into juices that are very popular among the younger generation nowadays. So that's why we think that for the juices that we are offering will be very appealing to the younger generation. With the second target will be about people who are health conscious, since the juices that are processed from the fruits are rich in vitamin C, and people who are health conscious will be drawn to make a purchase because they can consume it in an easier way. Say like they can consume it in juice or they can for direct consumption. And the last target will be for people who are environmentally conscious, because when they're making the purchase, which are the fruits generated from the trees, they are actually supporting to ease the situation of desertification. So how are we going to get to our customers? First, there can be two ways for them to make the purchase. First, they can play our existing game, which is Ant Forest. For existing users, they are now trying to convert their ant energy into planting trees or sponsoring the planting process. And for us, we are now going to leverage on this feature. And for people who have successfully planted for 5 trees, can be awarded for 1 free bottled drink. And another way for them to make the purchase or to get the bottled juice will be to pay directly at their store. For people, when people who are unaware of our existing game Ant Forest, when they are making the purchase or when they see our bottled juices, they may be willing to make the purchase. And ultimately, we are trying to draw people who are unaware of our game Ant Forest to be engaged in our game. So now I'm going to pass to my colleague to elaborate more on the feasibility of our whole project.
Well, thank you, Joby. Now, moving on to the feasibility of our logistics system, we believe that we can leverage the existing extensive infrastructure of the parent company, Alibaba's existing logistic system, to make delivery from the farms to our on-site processing, juicing, and packaging stations, as well as to make further deliveries to the households' homes, as well as other retail points. Now, where are these on-site processing, packaging, and juicing stations, you may ask? Well, from our research, we believe that we actually found out that Alibaba has already this comprehensive network of off-site grocery stores. It's called Hema Xianshen. And Hema Xianshen is actually one of our offline strategy. It is English, it's called Hema Grocery. It already has an extensive infrastructure and logistics system. And we believe that with the Alibaba ecosystem and retail chain, we can leverage this offline marketing strategy to promote our product in the future sustainably. Now, moving on to our online marketing strategy, we believe that we can always advertise Juicy in-app inside the Alipay app with more trees and energy. We can also do further advertisement on the official Tmall, which is another subsidiary of the parent company Alibaba, store, to highlight the ecological origin of the juice as well as its nutritional content. And last but not least, living in the age of the internet and with phones around us, we believe that it is also ideal to target millennial key opinion leaders endorsements on social media. And after thorough analysis, we believe that TikTok is the right platform to go. Now, moving on to the implementation timeline of our first strategy, Juicy, we understand that we're dealing something ecological here. We're dealing with trees growing and fruit bearing, so we are expecting a quite long timeline for our first strategy. Now, for the first 2 quarters of 2019, we'll be doing extensive research as well as logistic and supply information searching in order to help us move on to our strategy. And we believe that the tree growth and fruit bearing will take approximately 4 years to yield sufficient fruit for the production to start. And we believe that by the start of 2024, we can start our production and sales on the Hema Xianshen and do thorough further evaluation and research and potentially introduce new favors in the long run to make this project sustainable into the future. And now moving on to our second strategy, capitalization. We believe that Ant Forest and Ant Financial can capitalize on its existing ecosystem to reduce the cost immediately. How are we going to do that? So currently, after every purchase, there will be this screen shown on the user's phone on the left. It will be shown of the approximate exact payment that has been transacted, whether the payment is successful or not, and the user will be able to select a range of rewards, including payment reward. Now, we believe that with a new app update, we can introduce our CSR initiative to users by enlarging our Ant Forest initiative underneath each successful payment screen. And we believe that through this method, we can introduce our CSR initiative to more users, and again, to make this project sustainable into the future. And finally, we believe that capitalization can save cost in the immediate term for Ant Financial as well as Ant Forest. Next, I'll move time on to my colleague who will talk about the risk and mitigation as well as impacts of our strategy.
Thank you, Michael. So moving on, we have identified some key risks that our strategy might contain. And so to begin with, our first key risk is that some of the younger generations, our entire long-term strategy is kind of banking on the fact that people will buy our product. So we do understand that there is a risk that some people might not like the taste of our product. However, we would be able to mitigate this risk by modifying the flavor of the product, just so after conducting customer research, understanding what they like better and modifying our product accordingly. We've also identified the other risk of our second short-term strategy is that some users might not have the incentive to actually not save their money on their transactions and use it in the Ant Forest. They would just much rather save the money. So we understand that that is also another risk to our immediate term strategy of saving costs. So we realize that currently Ant Financial has done really well, and how we're going to mitigate this risk is by strengthening the more emotional connection that the consumers actually have with their trees, just so they can actually plant more trees. And we're just targeting more towards and leveraging what Ant Financial has currently already done really well. So moving on to the key impacts. So we do understand that you want to talk numbers. So in terms of numbers, so our first strategy, Capitalize, we are aiming to save about US $3.5 million for you in the short run. And in the long run, our Explore strategy of selling it, we're aiming to generate about 85 million in US dollars generated. We do understand that these figures might sound a little small because we did take a conservative approach. We do understand and realize that the main objective of our strategies is not to make money. It's just to make a little bit of money to make our project financially a little sustainable into the future. Because we are deriving a lot of indirect benefits from it in terms of reputational capital as well as environmental sustainability. So we do realize that these numbers may seem a little small. However, they're just generating enough revenue for them to keep this environmentally sustainable project running into the future. So moving on, we've also identified a certain cost that would be associated with our strategy. We've identified the bottling of the juices as well as the juicing, transportation, as well as marketing as our key costs. So today, in our presentation, what have we talked about? We've talked about Ant Forest and how it's currently unsustainable because it's going to cost Ant Financial more than $600 million in revenue in the coming years. However, we do realize that it's able to save a lot of carbon dioxide emissions. We do realize that it's Alibaba is actually gaining a lot of reputational capital from its CSR initiative. And a lot of people actually like planting trees, and they are planting trees. So what is the key question today? The question is how to derive a creative solution in order to just generate a little bit of money to keep this project financially sustainable into the future. And we do believe with our Explore as well as Capitalize strategy, we would be able to chart the future path for Ant Financial in order to keep Ant Forest running. And with that, we'll conclude our presentation and open the floor to questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Team HKU, for your presentation. Let's move on to the Q&A session. Judges, please.
Very good. Let's start with George.
Thank you. You talk about Hema grocery, and you talk about Tmall stores. And then you talk about TikTok being the best platform. Elaborate, please.
Well, first of all, thank you for your question. regarding to the Hema grocery, we believe that this is actually a relatively new grocery concept that has been brought to the Chinese consumers in recent years. And we believe that by advertising and promoting our brand new ecologically sustainable and organic juice inside the stores, we're trying to reach more consumers as well as to attract them into our CSR initiative in order to build a larger and more sustainable user base into the future for our company. Now, regarding to the second platform you mentioned, Tmall, we believe that we actually combine Tmall with Hema online to again advertise our CSR initiative as well as our juicy product again to more consumers to China. And with the last platform, TikTok, we believe that, again, living in the age of technology and with live streaming and mobile phones around us, this is, in recent years, probably the best way to promote something new to millennials, which is the main target of our product. And I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. If I may, just one more quick question about your N energy. 1 unit of N energy is equivalent to reduction of 1 gram, right? Then you talk about the internal currency concept. How to actually go from there? Should it be internal currency or always?
That's a great insight. So allow me to clarify. So our short-term strategy is targeting towards when we use the Alipay app. There's actually some kind of discounts or vouchers you get if you have a transaction over a certain limit. So what we'd be converting is that we'd be converting those discounts and vouchers in order to virtual points for Ant Forest. So instead of getting those discounts and vouchers, you'd be able to get a certain amount of Ant Forest credits that you would be able to use towards planting trees. So we realize that this is leveraging on the ecosystem that we currently have. This we can roll out in a short period of time, and hence we'd be able to save a certain amount of money in the short period of time. We understand that this this initiative means a lot because it is a CSR initiative. So we are just trying to convert and leverage on the current ecosystem we have in order to save money in the short run before rolling out our long run process to save a little bit more money. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. You mentioned at the outset in your introduction how Ant had introduced this CSR to counter the negative perception consumers have of fintechs and financial providers in the market. If I have allowed my hard-earned credits to be used to plant a tree, I might be a little bit irritated to see Ant seeking to monetize that when I go to the Hema grocery store. How do you avoid a negative reaction to that from consumers?
Thank you for your question, and actually we have taken that into account. Like I'm assuming you're now asking, people may get irritated or have negative feelings when they saw that their products are being sold at grocery points. But actually we can take a look at the example of organic farming in Hong Kong right now. For example, people like to go for organic farming and to plant the vegetables, and they are more than happy to share their products or their veggies with their friends, or like to promote, because they are thinking that they are helping to promote the idea of living green. And so that's why we think that it will not trigger negative feeling among the people, because they will actually support and be incentivized to go to groceries to purchase even their own products.
Yes, thank you. But you know, the impression they will take away is that Ant is making a profit from this product.
Okay, I understand your concern, and I think what my teammate was trying to clarify is that currently we're trying to, because as Ant Financial, although we're monetizing it a little bit, but we're not making a lot of money off of it. Our main goal at the end of the day is just to keep the project running. So I think through our marketing campaigns, that is what we're trying to do. And with our products, we're trying to achieve a more network effect. So when people go to the grocery stores, if they've never heard of Ant Forest before, they see, oh, this is a thing that people have done. Like, they've saved up carbon credits. There's actually the fruit of somebody, like it could be my neighbor. So we're trying to target towards more that network effect and to have more people use Ant Forest as well. So I think in order to avoid that kind of negative perception or irritation, we would definitely tie that into our marketing strategies in order to show the public that this is just a CSR initiative and not more so that we're monetizing and making money off of the scheme. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much.
I thought you wanted to respond also. Okay. When you looked at the alternative strategies at the beginning, you eliminated the government and the gamification. Why do you think the strategy that you have chosen, the Juicy strategy, is better than that one? And what are the concerns? Why did you eliminate that particular alternative?
Thank you for your question. So going back to our evaluation, so let's start with gamification, if we may. So for gamification, our strategy would have included then in-app purchases and like people spending money in App Forest to build their trees. So why we immediately cut down on that strategy is because we felt that by just allowing people to spend money to plant trees, it's not the same thing as them, actually saving up carbon emission credits and doing it. So it kind of undermines the whole process and the whole concept of Ant Forest. Hence, we realized that if we just allowed that, it would have been worse than actually people feeling that we're monetizing off of the juice bottles. So we picked up on that it's actually undermining the whole purpose of our CSR initiative. And because our key goal at the end of the day is not to make money, it's our CSR initiative. And hence, we felt that just undermining the whole thing would not be the right way to go forward. And hence, we canceled that out. We realized that by actually doing in the short term, we did the compensation thing in terms of their Ant Forest credits. We believe that that is more of creating a network effect as well as leveraging on our platform, which would not undermine the goal as much. Hence, we went for that. And in terms of the revenue generating strategies,
let me allow me to elaborate more on how we we would get the funding from the government. This is largely dependent on the impression that the public will receive. So currently we are giving financial support to the Sea Foundation, who is planting the trees to the desert. So through this system, we are showing how we use our own finance, our own fund, to give a direct impact. However, if we receive the government fund in order to eliminate the expenses we make in order to provide to the Sea Foundation, this sort of breaks a chain of thoughts for the people that we aren't actually providing a direct investment into environmental sustainability. Thank you.
How about the gamification side? Why did you eliminate that?
Maybe we have also come up with options like perhaps we can enrich the games or make it more challenging in order to engage more users. But then actually we think that even if we are adding more challenges to the games, actually we are targeting at people who are existing playing the games. But for our strategy, which is Juicy, we are trying to reach out to new customers. For example, when they're at the groceries, they are previously unaware of our products, but when they see that our new product Juicy, and then they will be aware of the game Ant Forest, and this will draw more people to be engaged in the game Ant Forest.
Mm-hmm. Okay. One more question. You rightly emphasized how much Ant Financial has achieved with 350 million users. Well, it's 5% of the population. It's a huge thing that they've achieved. And now you're coming up with a strategy that actually, really leads it to a product, and there's a good line of thought. But are you risking the whole achievement that they have established by sort of depending on the success of one product? how are you actually mitigating that risk? I know you say, okay, if this objection, that objection, this is the way you, but that's all tactical. What if the whole thing, the whole project doesn't take off, or maybe there's a food poisoning problem? You might actually risk the whole, the base of the 350 million that you've achieved. What do you think about that, and how would you mitigate that risk?
And that's a very good insight about, particularly like there may be issues like food poisoning, but then we are trying, or we are actually aiming to get control of our whole value chain. For example, like Alibaba, if they are implementing this strategy, they are starting to have quality control from the starting process, like from the provision of the raw materials to like the operation process, like the on-site juicing or bottling. So we believe that it would we can have close and monitor control on the quality.
Thanks. One question about user stickiness. You mentioned that at the outset that this was something you needed to focus on. I didn't see sufficiently well, I don't think, that the connection between what you were seeking to do and the user stickiness and user time on site. Can you expand on that a little bit more, please?
Please just let me clarify. Are you asking about the user stickiness of Ant Financial, or are you asking about the user stickiness of Ant Forest?
The stickiness of a user to the Ant Financial system.
Thank you very much. Well, as many of you know, Ant Financial as well as WeChat Pay is probably the two largest online payment system in China. So we believe, even though Ant Financial has been experiencing a degraded market share in the recent years from 70% to 53% as of 2017, we believe that WeChat Alipay is still an important lifestyle inside China, and we do believe that Chinese people are not giving up on Alipay that easily because of competition. So we believe that user stickiness is strong. It will continue striving into the future.
Allow me to add on to that. So I understand your concern of user stickiness and how currently it has gone down, as my colleague has mentioned. So basically, with our longer-term strategy of how we're actually incentivizing people to use Ant Forest more, we're actually incentivizing them to stay on our platform longer. Like for instance, we're providing them with a free bottle of our juice if they plant 5 trees. So by planting 5 trees, what that means is they actually have to generate more credits to plant these trees. And how do they generate more credits? They spend more time on our platform. So we're actually using that, leveraging that in order to increase user stickiness. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Just one. You talk about fintech players doing CSR, green CSR. In your case discussion process, did you touch on other ways for fintech companies to do CSR, such as inclusive finance or financial literacy or whatever? If you can share with us your thought.
Yes, so we do realize that financial companies can do green CSR in various other measures. However, what we've realized through our discussion as well as analysis is that currently a lot of green fintech companies, what they're doing is they're actually just having mutual funds or something that supports green initiatives like NGOs and stuff, but there's no direct link between fintech companies as well as actually direct impact on saving the environment. So we do realize that there have been other ways and other companies of doing that. However, we do feel that like at this point, our impact is way more direct. And I'll let my colleague add on.
Also, to add on to my colleague's point, it is important to understand that Alipay is a Chinese company where they have been criticized for its industrialization as well as the destruction of environment that led to deforestation that is actually impacting so many of the countries near, for example, Korea and Japan are experiencing microdust problems. So in this way, we're not just only promoting that we are socially responsible for our own users, but also globally, because Alipay and Alibaba, our parent company, is a global business entity.
Are there any more questions from the judges? Okay. If not, then thank you, Team HKU. Thank you. And you may please return to the audience for the next presentation.